Everybody, today I'm going to be talking about a Indiana police officer who was recently removed from the force over a situation where there was an egregious use of force on a, I believe, 18-year-old female. There's a couple of points that I want to hit on that are important to talk about in this situation that call into question the tactics used in policing and the over use of authority in this one specific situation and how that applies to everything across the board. So let's get right into it. I believe the situation happened at the end of last year. By all accounts, there is a young lady that's driving a, typical car, she gets pulled over by a police officer in a gas station parking lot. And the infraction apparently is that she has a front headlight out and that she's doing 7 miles over the speed limit. So unfortunately, the body camera of the police officer is not on at the beginning of the interaction. Take that information and do with it what you will. At some point in time, the police officer takes the young lady out of the car and violently and aggressively slams her to the ground, puts her in an armbar, and handcuffs her. Now, when I say violently takes her out of the car, slams her to the ground, and armbars her, those are his words that I'll bring up later on in this stream. So once he has her in detainment in the back of the vehicle, he is reprimanding her and chastising her about her inability to give him her license fast enough. Like when the body camera comes on, he's already got her in detainment. He's putting her in the back of the vehicle. And while this young lady is in the back of the vehicle, he's just berating her about not obeying him, not listening to him, not moving fast enough, that she is not in control of the traffic stop. It's a really disappointing situation because I'm the father of 3 young girls. So while this entire thing is happening, you have a innocent bystander who drives. I mean, this is a gas station, guys. An innocent bystander that drives into the gas station. The police officer yells at and chastises and gets on the case of the person that's driving this gas station. And keep in mind that this is a small town in Indiana. We're not talking about a real dangerous area like this is, middle America. The second police officer shows up, and when the second police officer shows up, the initial arresting officer is kind of giving his account of what happened. He says that, I had to take her and slam her. He says, I had to take her and slam her ass to the ground, put her in an armbar. She wasn't listening, yada, yada, yada. And as this is all happening, you can see the second officer is looking like towards the car. And come to find out, the second officer is an RSO, okay, or an SRO, excuse me. I said range safety officer. He's an SRO. I was at the range yesterday. So SRO is school resource officer. And he goes, hey man, that's like, I'm just going to make up a name. That's Hannah Johnson. He goes, that's Hannah Johnson, man. Like her parents, dude, they're going to be all over this. He goes, was your body camera on? And the cop says, no, my body camera didn't come on, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, was your camera in your car on? He says, yeah. And then he's like, well, there's surveillance all at this gas station. He goes, you need to document the hell out of this. You need to, dot your I's and cross your T's because her parents are going to be all over this. And there's like a slight pause, right? So within a couple of minutes, the dad of the young girl drives up and he's like, hey, that's my daughter's car. Is everything okay? And then the cop's attitude now completely changes. He's like, yeah, it's no big deal. There was she was driving 7 miles over an hour or 7 miles over the speed limit. You've also got a headlight out, and I approached her and she didn't want to identify herself. She didn't want to give up her license, and so I'm going to be taking her in for failure to ID, blah, blah, blah. And the dad's totally cool. And the dad says to the cop, he's like, hey, partly this is my fault. Like I've told my daughter, if you're ever stopped, to pull the window down just a little bit because, It could be a situation where, maybe it's somebody that's pretending to be a cop. All the kind of things that we tell our daughters, and our wives about being safe when they're interacting. If you tell your daughter or your wife, hey, if you get pulled over, like, drive to the nearest gas station, get to a place where you're in public, because it is a reality that, there's impersonators out there. There's situations where women and young girls can get caught up. So, the dad's explaining to the police officer that could be cause for why she didn't respond as quick as he would have wanted her to. And the dad is not upset, but the dad has no idea that she was drugged from the car and she was slammed to the ground. And guys, when this is over, I will put in the description a link to the news story. I was going to break this down on one of my live streams yesterday. I just couldn't get to it. I was too busy. But you will see in the video how aggressive this officer is with this girl, and she's tiny. When I say that, I feel like I'm minimizing what happens, because there's no situation where, I'm damn near 300 pounds. Like, I wouldn't want to be drugged out of a car and slammed to the ground. So it's not the size of the girl that makes it egregious. It's not the fact that it's a female that makes it egregious. It's just that, this interaction that this officer has with this young lady was so unnecessary. And we've seen videos, I'm sure you guys have seen videos where, people are non-compliant with the police. They're being belligerent. They're like screaming, yelling, cussing, fighting back, resisting. There's none of that with this girl. Like, you can tell from the moment that the video comes on, even when she's on the ground, she's on her face, and he's got her arms behind her back. He's got, he's being so aggressive and so rough with her, and she's so compliant. And she's like, would you please pick up my keys? Will you please pick up my license? Like, when he puts her in the back of the vehicle and he's yelling at her and he's admonishing her, like, she's like, like, she's so quiet and so demure. And it's just like, man, you see something like that, and it's just fucking, it's so sad. So here's my points to this. We have been talking on my platform and on social media the last couple of weeks. We've been talking about this Walgreens situation with the security guard caught on camera, right? And then in this situation, the camera that's supposed to be there to document the interaction between law enforcement officers and the public, he doesn't turn it on. So thank God that there was camera coverage from the gas station to be able to get that. But it's like, we shouldn't need cell phone footage or body camera footage or camera coverage for people to do the right thing. And my biggest complaint about law enforcement over the last couple of months has been that there's too much time, effort, and focus put on tactics. Now, I came on here the other day and I was talking about a fellow content creator who had made a video, and my issue about the conversation of filming police in public was that the idea that officer safety trumps people's rights and their humanity, and it simply doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, I think too often for police officers, they're so focused on tactics, number one. They're focusing on getting the win, number two, which is either the ticket or the arrest. And then number three, clearly focusing on their safety. But since they're always in this heightened state of being in a position where they feel like they're under attack or they're being threatened, that even when they're interacting with a young 18-year-old high school student, they're approaching it as if they're in some sort of life or death situation. You know what I mean? And it's important that I don't minimize what police officers go through, because I'm not. But this has to be addressed. This has to be addressed. The focus on tactics and the focus on securing the victory, whatever that is, cannot trump the common sense interaction of being so aggressive with a high school student that clearly was not a threat. Now, the other issue that sticks out in this situation is that the police officer, who I believe his name is Brian Schimmel, he was terminated swiftly. It's like once this came to light and people were made aware of what happened, the video was out, the conversation between police officer A, police officer B, the lack of the body camera, this guy was terminated quickly. Now, I don't know what the details are in terms of his termination. I don't know if he was fired or if he resigned. I don't know if he's lost his credentials and can just go down the street and apply somewhere else. I don't know. I don't have that information. But it's not lost on me how swiftly this situation, I don't want to say was rectified, but was dealt with. And you don't see that a lot. You don't see that a lot. So can we attribute that to the calls for change in policing? Can we attribute that to a change in transparency in terms of how things are handled? Can we attribute that to public pressure? Or is it because the victim in this situation, like the one police officer said, has family that's connected, that's known, and that's not going to tolerate it? You would like to see that type of action be taken across the board with anything that's egregious, right? The egregious nature of a security guard that does something wrong, swift decision to remove that person. A police officer doing something in the same vein, swift actions to remove that person. And I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Lastly, I'm not seeing, there's only been one officer that I have seen on social media, one police officer who is talking about this situation, who's talking about this case, and who's calling it out. You can see a video on the civil rights lawyer, CRL. He has a very prominent YouTube channel, talks about a lot of these kind of issues. He did an in-depth breakdown of everything that happens in this encounter. But I've only seen one police officer that's come out, and I'm on social media. You see how much I post, how much I'm doing this. I'm on social media all the time. You know, there's certain situations where we can debate and we can argue as to whether or not certain uses of force were necessary, were needed, if the person was compliant or not compliant. There's nothing about this situation where you can give any blame to this young lady. It's just flat out wrong. It's flat out wrong, and it's abuse of power. And I'm begging more police officers to speak out about this. It looks bad for your profession. It looks bad for the industry. It gives all of us who wear a uniform and interact with the public, it gives all of us a bad name. And, you know, I will continue to come on here and talk about any issue that pops up in private security. If there is an issue that shows itself with private security where we are out of line as an industry, we're making mistakes as an industry, there's areas for growth or change or development or a better approach to doing things within this industry, I will do my absolute best to always address it and come on here and talk about it. I am begging for somebody in the law enforcement side to do the same thing. It's a sad thing to watch. You know, this young lady wasn't shot, she wasn't killed, she's gonna be okay. It's not the most egregious video that I've seen, but it's unnecessary and it's over the top, and it's just sad to see how even in a situation where, you know, this location where this happens, probably one of the safest areas you could work, and clearly one of the least threatening people that you could have an interaction with, and it gets to this point. So let me check out my comments here before I get out of here. Hang on a second, I gotta merge. Somebody's talking about the fear of police officers to talk about things. Yeah, you know, there's a That one police officer, I'm not going to say his name, but there is one police officer who talks a lot about these issues here on YouTube. And I talked to him, and he said that because he's been talking about these things and because he's put himself out there, that it's put a target on his back. He's gotten a lot of flack from people within law enforcement. It's created a rift between him and people that he works with. And that's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate because, you know, if you're critical of something like this, we're not calling out the industry, and we're not calling out the job of being a law enforcement officer. And I feel like I'm always put in a position where I'm on the defensive and having to give this disclaimer. I'm not against cop. I'm not anti-cop. I support good policing. It's just this weird dynamic where there's no industry where you can't call out something that is a negative. Right now, we're grounding airplanes because there's an issue with the build of Boeing airplanes. So they're saying, hey, we're going to set these planes down. We're going to figure out what's going on. There's issues within every industry, medicine, private security, law enforcement, within any industry that have to be addressed. And the fact that if you address it, somehow that's a negative, that's not conducive to positive interactions and positive change. So, you know, the only thing that I can do is just come on and highlight these situations and talk about it. I will try and do it from a position of being less confrontational about it. Maybe it's my delivery. People get upset with how I deliver this kind of content, but I don't make the content. I'm just sharing the situation that happened. And I have reached out to a lot of content creators on the law enforcement side, and they don't want to have this conversation. I'm very, very hopeful that this other person, when he gets his situation figured out, that he will come on and do a podcast, and we'll do a live stream and we'll talk about this. I think he's leaving the department. So if you're watching, officer, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the fact that you bring light to these subjects, and I actually found out about this case via your channel. So shout out and respect to you for what you do. And again, at the end of the day, it's all about transparency and just getting people to understand what's going on and hopefully create some change through dialogue. All right, guys, I gotta go. Y'all have a great day. Be safe.